Greetings and God bless. So I was just looking up that song, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and it seems to be sung and it's featured a lot. It seems like England does this as kind of like a tribute to things American, and so they sing it uh, after 9/11, and it just dawned on me that December 2023 is a million times worse than 9/11, or a thousand times worse than 9/11. And yeah, that was a bad time. And I mean, when I first heard about it, I didn't even see the news cast or whatever. Somebody just said um, that those buildings got bombed. And my first thought was it's an inside job because I have family who worked in buildings, and there's just no way a landmark could so easily just there's no way it could happen the way we were shown it did, just from day to day personal experience of buildings. Um, Anyways, that aside, even though firefighters were poisoned from that air, and it was like this mass human sacrifice kind of a thing, and all the corruption that went behind the insurance claim, like the guy got a double um, um, compensation with the insurance, and it was just this big corrupt legal scandal, and there's just all this, like, all these folks knew about it. If you look at the stock market, 2 days before and the day before, there's all this trading going on in the stock market. And I happen to know because this person who followed the stock market closely was like, 2 days before, he was like, wow, there's stuff going on with the stock market. So it was 2 days before 9/11. And the same thing happened with Pearl Harbor. People were relocated like days before Pearl Harbor. So the most valued assets in that Pearl Harbor area were removed. And that is just what this deep state with the hidden hand does. And so, clearly there's been corruption for decades, for centuries. But the warfare, the psychological warfare, and the chemical warfare, the hidden warfare, I think it's called fifth generation warfare, the frequency warfare with 5G and cell phone towers and stuff sprayed, the heavy metal sprayed into our air, supposedly to reduce global warming, even though it's 20 degrees out in wintertime. They want to make it colder and cloudier. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. And my progressive liberal friends and family will say, oh, that's just not true. We got to save the planet and kill ourselves. That's the mentality of the liberals. It's just so psychotic now. I mean, it was messed up. When 20 years ago, I was a progressive liberal, and all the brainwashing is that humans are a cancer on the planet, and you need to reduce your impact on the planet. But what I see the most like rabid liberals is they'll have an expensive bike, but they have their car that they generally use. And they're always going away for the weekend, or they're always traveling on the plane to visit their family. And then they get married, and then they have children, and then they have a 2-car family, and then they have a large home. So the progressive liberal left is like, I will virtue signal about how light on the planet I am, even though my lifestyle is totally a burden on the planet, if we're going to be in that mentality. if we believe in that. Like, now I'm a Christian. God said, prosper, have children. The world is yours. And, if you look into other truther stuff, there's a lot of land. There's not an overpopulation thing. The Satanists want to reduce the human population for probably a million reasons, and probably because the more people there are, the more God that's here on the planet, because the Holy Spirit can inhabit, human beings. But my point is that that September 11th, in the aftermath, like September 12th, and in 2002, like, so there, 9/11 was this kind of heavy day for the next, I don't know, 10 years. It was kind of like this, like, looming day. Not so much now, right? Like, people barely think about it. Like this September, I barely noticed it. And now, with the left all busy trying to get their children and their grandchildren to get sex changes, or schools and teachers trying to get children to get sex changes, little kids, toddlers, and parents are doing this Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Like, if their kid has to have a sex change, well, then that parent gets a whole lot of attention, gets a lot of support, gets a lot of interest, gets a lot of leverage. Like, it's so sick. And then this color, like, businesses are into this diversity, inclusion, whatnot, to the point where even people in positions of power are being driven to suicide. I saw this one situation where and who goes into this? It's angry people, whether they're Antifa, whether they're these BLM people, and they're weaponized, sadistic people that get to that are like they're there to target people. I mean, it's so sick. And it's like formal workplace bullying. That's what this DEI thing. And it's just, oh, well, we're gonna formalize workplace bullying. But since the alphabet community can never ever be a bully, and since people of color can never ever be a bully, or since women can never ever be a bully, because the LGBT community, people of color and women, since they're oppressed, there's no such thing as them bullying anybody. They've never committed crimes. They've never molested children. They've never, harmed anybody, apparently, like, in this insane Marxist mentality. So then they're given, like, ultimate power to bully anybody who's white, male, heterosexual, and in a position of power, to drive them to suicide. And I've seen an article about that. Nobody wants to hear that. And apparently there's no accountability. Like, when I was in Denver some months ago, I was crossing a street, and it had this lit sign saying, "Do not turn, don't make a right turn." And it was my light. I was crossing the street. I was on the zebra crossing, trying to just get back onto the sidewalk because I just completed my walk across the street. And this Latino guy, this Mexican guy with this brand new car, was trying to make a turn. And what I don't understand is people wait until in front of their car to then make their rapid turn. When they had the whole, like, it was like one of those two big, I don't know, maybe 4-lane street crossings. So he had plenty of time to turn, but it's like people wait until you're in front of their car for them to put their foot on the gas. I don't understand it. And so I got upset. I was like, "Hey," and he was like, ready to fight. And he probably didn't speak a word of English, because this was some months ago. So he got the brand new car that the US government, that the liberals give, and he probably had a free place to live and probably had a lot of benefits, unlike me. Okay. Um, and, like if I could pretend to be an illegal alien, I would be doing 10 times better. I would be have more money than when I worked full time. And the thing is, trying to get a full time job, when you don't know somebody, when you're not going to do some shady thing, it's really hard. And it's people are like, oh, nobody wants to work. There's no good employees. No good boss. There's not a lot of good bosses out there, and they don't want to hire people who are good employees. They want to hire somebody that's going to give them sexual favors, going to give them drugs, going to do something that titillates them. There are not a lot of employee or that they're going to give the job to their sister-in-law's brother or something like that, or they want somebody really really super attractive. They're not looking for somebody who's trustworthy, who will show up, who just has integrity and honesty until something bad happens. When that brother-in-law's sister's cousin employee does something wrong, then they complain about they were dishonest or something like that. Or when they hired somebody to do something shady, then they're going to complain when something dishonest goes on. But in my experience, employers are not interested. They do not value honest people, honest workers. You are you're disposable. They don't do anything to retain you. I mean, it just everything is on you to scrabble and claw your way to that next paycheck. You don't get good tools. You don't get a decent, humane physical environment. And people will try to say, oh, you're just complaining. No. Like OSHA regulations, which are very basic, which are just the skeleton of what an organism needs to stay alive. And these rules are broken all the time. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because there's not enough employees to hold businesses to account about their violations. When you're dealing with like human rights violations or attorneys that are working on businesses that harm their employees, like there's not enough manpower to deal with the abuses that occur, and it takes a lot for anybody to hold an abuser to account. You have to really, because the victim is abused when they are trying to hold somebody to account. Your character is under scrutiny, and just as there's all this bureaucracy, there's all this red tape, there's all this friction. There is so much, like whenever we see something in the news about something working out, like either that person had some really good influence or that person was willing to sacrifice so much in order for justice to be served. So anyways, my point is though, so December 2023, there's this crazy Marxist perverted possession, this demonic possession by the left, of the Marxists have taken over American culture. So they want to get children to be gay and trans, and the parents, like everybody's supposed to be gay and trans somehow, as if that's just the natural way of things, which it is not. And they're still poisoning our food, air, water. there's all this frequency disruption with the cell phone towers, with the mobile phones, with dirty electricity. I mean, just basic electricity is a problem for people. And then we have this anti-white rhetoric that's being taught in schools, that's being forced in the workplace. And I mean, as like, I'm walking on the street and I have seen like black on white violence. I have heard it against me for walking on the sidewalk, for crossing a street. Just, and the person was in their car, and the car had one of those like touchscreen, like dashboard. I mean, this was not some poor person from the ghetto. Like, this person had a car. They were driving by the university. So I think it was, this was this Marxist university trained academic black person that's like, oh, I get to bash white people. I get to bash this lone white woman, this older lady, for being white, because he was just calling me a white bee, and he was shouting from his car multiple times, trying to get me to engage. He was like, "You hear me? Do you like?" And what he wanted me to hear was that I was a white bee, and how dare I walk on the sidewalk? Like, does that make sense to you? Of course, if you're a progressive liberal, yes, that makes sense, because somehow I deserve to be abused because of what happened possibly 400 years ago. And I used to have a friend who thought that way, who said I deserved to be assaulted by people of color because of my skin. Like, I did not know that this was a progressive liberal people of color viewpoint. And that's wrong. Like, nobody should be abused. I don't think black people should be abused. I don't think Marxists should be abused. Like, nobody should be assaulted because they're a Marxist, or because they're black, or because they're white. So, but that's where we are right now, December 2023. If you're not into BLM, if you're not into Antifa, if you're not into the alphabet pedo agenda, the blaming children for perverts to be attracted to them. That's what they got this new term, minor attractive person, as if it's the minor's fault. The minor attracted me. Oh, the minor's trying to be seductive. The child's trying to be seductive. No, there's a pervert who's demonized, and they're trying, like, that's what these evil Marxists try to do. They blame the victim. The thing is, like, when I was growing up in New York City, there would be difficulties, and it would be black people, and they would say, "Oh, you are doing this because I'm black." And you would hear this all the time. But if those black people looked around, they would see that white people, white women, white men, poor white people, or even well-heeled white people, like, stuff happens. Obstacles happen, difficulties happen to white people, to rich white people, to poor white people, to smart white people, to whatever, it's not, bad things are not just happening because of somebody's skin color. Bad things happen because bad things happen. And it's, like maybe I'm wondering nowadays, because like when I was a kid and my parents divorced with my siblings, I treated them extra carefully because I just felt like I had to protect them. And then my younger siblings became like really entitled and like temperamental toddlers, and so hateful and resentful towards me. And I am wondering if that's what the grandparents and parents of Black people in my generation, like if the grandparents felt guilty for having kids, bringing kids into this world, so they treated their children like, very protectively and over lovingly. And so the children never kind of matured emotionally. I don't know, because that's what I think happened with my siblings. Because my younger siblings are like, why didn't you sacrifice your whole life and come home from college and bring us up? Like, why didn't you move back home after you went to college and at 17 and come home and bring us up? Like, be our mommy. Like, and they were telling me this when they were 40 years old. Like, this was like a few years ago. And I'm like, you're in your 40s and you think that me as a teenager should have come home, lived with dad, and been your mommy? Like, so anyways, this immaturity, this blaming and shaming, it's a human pathology. It's not just what black people are doing, but I think, it can occur in a black person. But I've seen it even in my own family of like, trying to shelter the people, and the people become like a monster. So that's what's happening now. And just this kind of perverted sexualization of everything. Like, sexuality has to be talked about all the time, like, and extreme perversion. Like, we have to really dwell on that. That has to be mentioned at work. The first thing you have to know is somebody's sexual orientation, because the moment somebody's going into pronouns, okay, this person is a pervert. Like, there's something really unhinged about them. And actually, when it's happening at a workplace, that workplace is run by perverts, and there's something unhinged about that company, and that company is cursed. Like, you do not want to work with a media company that's doing that. You don't want to work with a big organization, a big nonprofit, because they are truly accursed if they're pushing this anti-Christ, this anti-biblical, anti-God agenda, because God created man and woman, and that was good. So, I understand if you have stuff that you're working through, that's a grassroots kind of a thing. But when it's this top-down forced agenda, that's really so evil. It's just so evil. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody's like thing that they're working through. I've had stuff I had to work through. I've had friends who had stuff they worked through and still are working through. And God bless them, But when it's a top-down thing, when BlackRock is running your company, when the U.S. government is giving you some type of funding and they're forcing you to be LBGT, like that you have to be on this pronoun bus or something like that, like, get out, do not do this. And like what happened with the lockdowns, like, people were imprisoned, patients were imprisoned, nursing home people were imprisoned. They were not allowed to see their family for no reason. And deaths were incentivized. Some hospitals were paid up to $500,000 for a CV death. And the job of a hospital is to make money. It's not to make you better. It's not to make you feel good. It's not to heal you. What's the job of a hospital? What's the job of medicine? It's to make money. It's about power and money. So when a hospital is going to get $500,000 for a particular thing, do you think that they're not going to try to adjust, take advantage of that? Of course they're going to take advantage of that. That's the whole point, is to push those statistics, because this was a world control. This was an attempt at taking over, at literally doing some medical martial law kind of a thing. That's what it was. And people went along with it. Like, stuff with 9/11, the corruption that we have now compared to the corruption then. Okay, so all of our Air Force folks, they were told to stand down. So they were told it was some sort of exercise, So they allowed these planes, and they, Who knows if there were even real planes now? We're told there's like this type of hologram or, you know, fake images that can be projected onto the sky, Project Bluebeam or something like that. So there was military involved and other people involved in that event. But what happened, I would say, in 2020, like all these 5G, like when the lockdowns happened, all these 5G things went up. And like I was used to use Nextdoor and I was asking, hey, asking about it. And I got banned. And then like they were pushing the BLM on Nextdoor. And I was saying, hey, asking about the masks, and I got banned. So the censorship that is here right now, like people were questioning, like from the very beginning, I didn't believe the narrative about the Twin Towers. I said it was an inside job. And then within, I don't know, a couple of years, all this stuff showed up that it was an inside job, that all this gold was moved and all this stuff was being done, like, major, just things were being installed. Anyway, but, like, and people were like, oh, I don't believe it, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't a big deal. So people would dismiss people talking about it. But you weren't like on YouTube or whatever, like they didn't ban you. They didn't take down your commentary, or, your friends weren't like, I hope you die. But when the lockdowns happened, like I was talking to somebody on the phone, I was 2,000 miles away, and I was saying I didn't wear a mask. I don't believe in suffocating myself. And she was like, I hope you die. And so something like Americans jumped the shark. And I don't think it was like, 2020 and the knee on the neck kind of a thing. Although I think that was some sort of magical thing. I think that there was some sort of weird magical black magic spell casting with that, and the fires and the riots and the rampant and like, what is up with the liberals so willing to throw their children under the bus, their grandchildren under the bus, themselves under the bus? Progressive white liberals are like, oh, yeah, I'll crawl on my knees in order to display some type of penance for what happened 400 years ago. Like, what is up with that? That is so sick. That is so codependent. That is so enabling of a pathology. Like where did the liberals wisdom and maturity and expectations and standards go? Because us doing something now is not going to fix what happened in history. And if we're going to act that way, then do we go through, well, 30 years ago this black person assaulted me, so that black person needs to pay reparations to me, or 30 years ago some white person did something to me even though I'm white and that person was my boss, like, so are we going to do this, or like where does it stop if we're going to like expect reparations for every injustice? It's just it's so pathetic and it's so shallow, but people are capitulating to it. And I know people are overwhelmed, they're bribed, they're brainwashed, and they're blackmailed by their retirement. I think that's the thing, is like people are like, they're so burned out, they're just waiting for retirement. I mean, I know I'm burnt out. I'm waiting for the rapture because I just don't really feel like there's any hope. I don't feel like there's options. I don't feel inspired. So, yeah, I really think that, if we were back in 2001, even, the day of or day after or year after that event with the towers, it was so much of a better world. It was so much of a better life experience than 2023, where we're all being poisoned in our air, food, and water, and zapped with 5G, 6G, who knows what else, and under supernatural warfare, and our friends and family hate us if we're not Marxist liberals who are into molesting children. I mean, that's where we're at. It's such a horrible de-evolution that America's gone into, and like it's just I can't wait for Jesus to return, because something it's only going to get worse. And so I just wanted to share that, see what you guys think. Like, do you think we're better in 2023 than right when that attack on the towers happened? Do you think we're doing better? I think we're just it's like a precursor to hell, it seems to me. And it's sad, like there was so much that was good about America, and I haven't even gone over all of the horrible stuff that's going on. I mean, the looting, like people just thinking they can shoplift, and people attacking people, animal attacks, weird reactions to pharmaceuticals and those medical procedures that were being forced on people, and the corruption. Like that's the worst. I mean, because people who worked in the medical industry, from people in nursing homes and hospitals to the folks who were doing the testing, I mean, like they were breaking the blood-brain barrier. Like people were like, I will take money to break people's blood-brain barrier. I will take money to break somebody's crib form plate so that they will get sick. Because that's what you do. When you break the blood-brain barrier, when you break the crib form plate, in order to do that nasal thing, because they bloodied people's little children. They bloodied they gotta make sure we get your sample. And they did this to some people every day. And parents let that happen to their children. Grandparents, they demanded, parents and grandparents demanded, or family members demanded, you get that, break your crib form plate, break your child's crib form plate, break the grandparents' crib form plate, break your crib form plate for me. That's what we were doing. And we thought it was okay. People at the airport, break your crib form plate. You want to travel. And then wear a mask. So you breathe in all the staph that you have, all the waste, because when you exhale, you're exhaling your waste, your body waste. So we break your crib form plate, and then you have to wear a mask. Wear it when you're sleeping. Wear it when you're having intimate moments with your husband or wife. Kiss with that mask on. I mean, and people don't see that as sick. I have friends and family who are like, yeah, this is great. This is what we needed to do. I can't wait to leave this reality. I'm so wrong. And the sane people, the good people, the honest people of today in the United States are basically criminalized. Like we are the criminals. So it's the rapists who are the law. It's the murderers who are the law, who are the just. Like you are legal. You are lawful if you're an incesting, pedophile, rapist, murderer. You are justice when you are a murdering, pedophile, rapist. But if you're honest, God-fearing, law-abiding, like truly law-abiding, God-fearing person, you are a criminal today in America. And like it's conservatives that I've seen, they'll wear the mask, they'll do the nasal swab, and they'll try to rationalize the LBGT stuff or whatever. the open borders. Like, yeah, the Marxists are messed up. They're possessed, but there's these soft conservatives who are like, oh, it's they've got enough leverage, they've got enough resources, so it's not a big problem, and they profit by it, because there's a lot of conservatives that made money with all this Marxist stuff that's going on, because they were in positions of power or responsibility, and they made it work for themselves. So yeah, and they don't want to know. They don't want to know that the open borders is messed up, because they like the open borders because that means more cheap labor, so they can build their ranches and their compounds and stuff for cheap. So they're like, oh, it's okay, So, yeah, things are going to get worse. And I'm so sorry. So sorry I wasn't grateful for life when it was so much better. And I bet life is better right now than it's going to be a year from now. So, isn't this messed up? Isn't this like horrific? It's like this slow unfolding horror movie. Like, usually horror movies, there's like, the killer and like blood and death and stuff like that. But like, this horror movie has been going on for like 3 years, almost 4 years, right? Like, this is a long horror movie. And the thing is, like, imagine a horror movie where people are being killed, but they're like, oh, Judy didn't die. Oh, Timmy didn't die. They just evaporated. Or no, nothing happened to them. They're fine, even though the body's like right there. Like, that's the worst part of this all. Is folks are like, oh, I don't see the dead body. You're just so mistaken. You just need to stop thinking. You just need to stop seeing and hearing. Like, that's the worst part of this massacre, of this horror movie of the past few years. Is people are like, oh, it's not happening. Because when 9/11 happened, yeah, we all knew something was wrong. When other things happen, when there's a snowstorm or power outage or whatever, the earthquake, okay. But when people are like, oh, no, there's no earthquake, well, there's no power outage. And when everybody around you is saying there's no earthquakes going on, no power outage, everything's fine. Like, that is really tough. And when they're like, oh, it's okay to be a pedophile. It's okay to incest your children. It's okay to break their cryptform plate. It's okay to poison your children and your loved ones and your spouse and your grandparents. And, oh, well, wow, somebody got hurt. Something's wrong with, there some consequences. And then they're sorry, maybe. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people with regrets. But, they're not around for long. Like, they get censored. So, yeah, and I'm sitting here chatting here because it's not easy to talk about this with other people because it's so sick, it's so dark. Nobody wants to talk about it, or not for long. And people that do or are informed, they're burned out by now. We're burned out. So I'm just hoping the rapture happens. And I've been hoping. I mean, I got to admit, I've been waiting for the rapture even well before the riots and the lockdowns and stuff like that. So I guess it's been like 5 years maybe. And things get worse and worse. It's so like so sick. It's so demonic. And the Bible says things have to get really bad in order for Jesus to have a good reason to return to hold people to account. So things are going to get even more disgusting and sick and twisted than it is now. So I hope you check out 1 Corinthians 15, 1-4 and Romans 3:25. Really try to have a relationship with Jesus, because all of the stuff that's going on is very satanic. So thanks for watching. God bless.